call the Salt Lake City Planning Commission to order. My name is Brenda Scheer, and I'm the Planning Commission Chair. And I need to read you the following notice. I, Brenda Scheer, Planning Commission Chair, hereby determine that with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic conditions existing in Salt Lake City, including but not limited to this week's spike in Utah COVID-19 hospitalizations and the presence of the more aggressive and contagious Delta variant, that meeting at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present. So thank you all for joining us remotely on WebEx. And the commission members are here, and they will, for the most part, you will be able to see them in video. So the first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for August 25th, 2021. Commissioners, do I have a motion?
Ms. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission approve the minutes for August 25th.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question in the Dropbox there in draft form. Is that going to be the final version?
I do not know the answer to that.
Yes, once they're approved, they go final.
There you have it. They're draft until we approve them. All right. So, whatever. So, okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. So we're going to go with Amy.
Yes.
Marlene.
Maureen?
Maureen. Sorry, Maureen.
Yeah, there's a Maureen here too.
Yes, that's okay. But you're the commissioner. Maureen.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
John.
Yes.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a unanimous approval. The next item is the report of the chair and the vice chair, and I do not have anything to report.
Neither do I.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So, report of the director. Do we have any items from the director this evening?
I don't have anything to report at this time. We do have Michaela, who is my partner in crime tonight. Michaela, do you have anything you want to report on?
Michaela,
if you're trying to speak. It does not.
I do not. Thank you. Sorry about that.
okay. That's okay. So if we are finished with our reporting, we'll go ahead and open the issues for the public hearing. The first one is the Bueno Avenue Apartments Zoning Map and Master Plan Amendment at approximately 129 South, 700 East. And let me give you the numbers. The zoning map amendment is case number PLN PCM 2021-00048. The master plan amendment, case number PLN PCM 2021-00047. And our staff member presenting this evening is Katia.
Thank you. Let me start by sharing my presentation. Okay. So on tonight's meeting, I will be presenting the master plan and zoning map amendment for the project on Bueno Apartments, approximately at 129 South, 700 East. And this is an area map of this project. As you can see, this bigger parcel here is actually has the address from.
Katia, we cannot see your your slide. I mean, we see the first slide, but we don't see any additional slides.
Hmm.
I might try doing a slideshow instead of this is the presenter. No, this
Okay.
is
Let's see.
there you go. Nope, nope. Went back.
Can you see it now?
No, we saw it for just a second there, and now it's back at the first slide.
Okay, let's.
Katja, it seems like so over on your left-hand side, can you just click on the next slide down and see if it manually will go?
Can you see it now?
We could just see
No.
the
Oh,
cover.
there we go. Okay, there you go. Now
Okay.
try going it forward. There you go. Great.
Perfect.
Right. Okay, so this bigger lot here is addressed from 700 East, 129 South, 700 East. And then there are 9 other parcels in the back of this site that are addressed from Bueno Avenue. And Bueno Avenue is a private right-of-way that ends at the parcel here. There's no continuation. For some reason, my computer is taking a lot of time to. Just a little bit about this project. This is the current condition, existing condition. These are carpool storage units that are associated with the apartment building. And then on the other side here, you can see there are 7 homes. This is the apartment building now that faces 700 East with the carports, some vacant land, and then some small homes that are proposed to be demolished with this project. So this is a proposed project. It would consolidate the 10 parcels here and then replace it with a single-story amenity building fronting 700 East, and then a 4-story rooming house on the interior of the site. The rooming house would consist of 65 units, and each of these units would share a cooking and a living room facility and would have a bathroom for each of the bedrooms. The site is approximately 1.555 acres. Here's a rendering of the property. This would be a leasing building with more amenities. And here in the back is the rooming house. So the Planning Commission on June 23rd heard this project already, but voted to table the plan development and the conditional use. And at that meeting, the Planning Commission forwarded a favorable recommendation to the City Council to approve the master plan and zoning amendment. However, that vote was later recalled in the following meeting because we have an ordinance, the mitigation of residential housing loss, that requires that the Planning Commission consider a housing mitigation report for zoning amendments prior to making a recommendation to the City Council. For that reason, that vote was recalled. So tonight, in front of you, we're presenting the master plan, the zoning amendment, and the housing mitigation report. So the reason what the applicant is requesting is to change the Central City Community Master Plan, which currently designates that property as medium density residential, and requests to change to a medium high density residential. And here you can see where the property is in relationship with the block. And here is what the change would be from medium density to medium high. When we analyzed this project, staff took in consideration other master plans. The housing plan, Plan Salt Lake, and the Central Community Master Plan. And took in consideration that this request would promote the redevelopment of the site and would help meet city growth and housing goals listed on the master plans listed above. The other issue that is being reviewed at this meeting is the zoning map amendment. As you can see on this map, there are 3 properties that are zone RMF 45. And then there are 7 parcels that are zone SR3. The request is to make all of the site be RMF 45. In other words, rezone these 7 parcels that are SR3 to RMF 45. As you can see, this graphic shows the surrounding land uses and how they match the proposed development, being that a lot of these land uses are multifamily residential. Now I want to just talk a little bit about the housing loss mitigation and why it was why it's coming to you. It should have been presented at the same time as the rezoning. We have an ordinance that requires that the Planning Commission consider a housing mitigation report for zoning amendments prior to making a recommendation to the City Council. So the Planning Commission needs to review that at this time with the request for rezoning. Any zoning amendment that would permit a non-residential land use requires a housing mitigation plan to be approved by the city. So any zoning amendment, and because the RMF 45 would allow for non-residential land uses, the zoning amendment is subject to the housing loss mitigation process. So why do we have a housing loss mitigation? Is to guarantee that the city gets something in return when there is a loss of affordable housing stock due to new development. And how do we, measure what's being lost? And by the way, I just want to point out that the housing loss mitigation ordinance has been the city has been working on it for a very long time. The city recognizes that it is deficient in actually getting the goals that are needed for any housing mitigation. So it is in the process of being redone. But for now, we are working on under this current ordinance, and it requires that the director of the Department of Community and Neighborhoods signs the report, reviews it, and approves it. And this housing mitigation report that we're presenting has done that. It's signed by the director. It requires that the Planning Commission evaluate if the housing loss mitigation plan is adequate. And the way the ordinance is structured to do that is by giving the applicant 3 options. One is was the construction of replacement housing. Another is the payment of fee based on difference between the existing housing market and value and the cost of replacement. And the third option is a payment of a flat mitigation fee. Since the applicant can choose, they chose option B, which is the fee based on difference between housing value and housing replacement cost. So according to the plan and according to the option of looking at a fee, it was the calculation resulted that the cost for replacement was a lot higher, so it was a negative number for replacing the 6 homes. If you reduce the actual cost of the house with the cost to replace the house, there was a negative number, so no mitigation fee is required at this time. Staff finds that the housing loss mitigation report results does not change the original staff's recommendation. The petition to rezone these parcels from SR3 to Rmf 45 zone will result in replacement of housing stock that allows for housing for 192 individuals. And we find that the outcome of this project is a net increase in housing. So our findings for the master plan and zoning amendment is that this inner block is in disrepair, and further development of the site under the current zoning and master plan designation could result in the removal of affordable housing stock to be replaced with very high priced housing. And with that, that's my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Katya. Does anyone have any questions at this time? I have a question. Do you know how the zoning ordinance treats a ribbing house? What is the definition of a unit under a ribbing house?
I can, you know, I don't have the definition at the, you know,
I'm going to try to look that up for you now.
yeah, it's
too.
in my staff report, but I, you know, I apologize. I couldn't.
I can't find it in the staff report, but that's okay. It is a complicated question, and I think it goes right to the heart of this issue, of these part of this issue. So, okay. No one else has any questions? We'll go ahead and move to the applicant. Is the applicant here?
Yeah, it looks like Kevin Perry is the applicant. Kevin, do you have a presentation? Would you like to share a screen?
I would, and while I get that up, I'd be willing to chime in on that unit question, as we did dig into that with planning staff initially. Or if you'd like me to jump into the presentation, I will do that.
Go ahead and answer that question if you can.
Yeah, so we looked into how a unit is defined in a rooming house. You would look at this, a unit is, this is not like a multifamily unit definition. In a rooming house, they go by bedroom. So when you look at a density regulation, where the density on this site, the total acreage for residential multifamily housing would be 67 units allowed. The density regulation on a rooming house does not apply in the same way. They look at it per bedroom, similar to how you would look at the density of a hotel on a site. So look at it per bedroom, and the density is limited by your parking counts, your height restrictions, your setbacks, all of those kind of things is how you would determine the allowed density on the site, not the number of bedrooms in the case of a rooming house.
Okay, so perhaps you can answer the question of why. So what is the density allowed? Okay, so what, I don't quite understand what you're saying. You're saying that the master plan has very specific limits of 20 to, or excuse me, 30 to 50 for medium high density housing.
Yes.
So
And
how is that affected? Why wouldn't we just keep it at medium if it's actually doesn't matter what those unit numbers are?
in our case, we've designed this for simplicity's sake. We've designed this as a multifamily unit and designed it to be 65. If you're looking at it as a traditional multifamily unit, 65 units. So you're kind of looking at bedrooms and units, but it's 65 units ranging from 1 to 4 bedrooms. So that would determine the density as under a multifamily use.
Right, but that's not what we have here. We have a rooming house use. So how do we, so I guess I'm asking both you and the planning staff if they want to weigh in on this. We can talk about this later, but why don't you go ahead and make your presentation while they start to look up that issue.
Give me just a moment and I'll get my screen shared here. Please let me know if you're seeing a slideshow presentation.
Not yet.
Okay, how about now?
There
You're seeing a slideshow? Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to this project and hear the Bueno Avenue Apartments project again. So as you know, and you heard from Katya, this project has been reviewed already, and In the previous meeting, the commission did vote to recommend approval of the master plan and zoning amendment. We wanted to point out that the reason we're here again today is specifically to discuss the housing mitigation plan, which planning staff did include as a condition of approval on the initial June 23rd hearing when this did receive that recommendation for approval. We were surprised when the approval was recalled, despite having now completed a housing mitigation plan per that condition in the original meeting. At any rate, just reiterating today, you were specifically looking at the master plan and zoning amendment, and the conditional use and plan development is not under consideration in this meeting. So we're only looking at the master plan and zoning amendment. So this project is a co-living project. Co-living is new and unique in Salt Lake. There are not other co-living projects. So this project consists of 65 units, pods of 1 to 4 bedrooms each, just like a typical multifamily unit. However, we are renting those bedrooms individually. So it's Class A luxury apartments. There's no compromise to finish or quality. This is top of the market in terms of quality and luxury living. And then we are renting these by the bedrooms, which generally will cause the rental rates to come in at about 40% lower than the comparable studio apartment rental option that's out there. So this is the concept of sharing your living unit common spaces with other tenants. Here's an example of our biggest unit, the 4-bedroom unit, which makes up the majority of this project. So in a 4-bedroom unit, the kitchen, the laundry room, the living room are shared between 4 individuals. Each of those individuals are renting a private and secured bedroom with a private bathroom. And this project targets members of the workforce who are currently completely priced out of traditional housing that's going up in Salt Lake. And just so you know, according to CBRE, the average Class A rent rate in downtown Salt Lake City is $1,558 a month. So what that means is an entry-level teacher making $37,000 a year is paying over 50% of their pre-tax income in rent. At our project, this same teacher, and that's Salt Lake City School District salary. That same teacher in this project would pay about 25% of their income in rent. Now, HUD defines rent as affordable when it comprises 30% of family income. And we obviously recognize co-living isn't for everyone. It's clearly targeted to individual renters. It's rather than couples or families. This isn't an attempt for a one-size-fits-all multifamily project like you see lining 400 South right now, but it's a unique housing type and an opportunity to provide shared spaces that reduce rent dramatically. It's going to be professionally managed and luxury level of living. As Katya mentioned, the site consists currently of vacant land. There's some 7 single-family structures, a 6-unit multifamily structure, and large abandoned storage garages on the site. The entire site, the entire block, rather, essentially the entire block surrounding this site is currently zoned Rmf 45. And these 7 parcels containing 6 homes are zoned SR3, all within the boundaries of our project. So the SR3 zoning causes a difficulty in being able to develop this type of housing, a multifamily project, but we are seeking to have a uniform zoning across all of the parcels with Rmf 45 and a consistent master plan designation. It's important to note that the SR3 parcels are consist of dirt roads, failing utility infrastructure, and 6 homes which are built to the lowest architectural standards of their time. These homes are riddled with major issues right now, including serious structural problems, failed utilities, and foundations. So approval of this zoning amendment would allow the density across the subject site to be 42 units per acre. All of the surrounding uses around our property are multifamily use with an average density of 43 units per acre, which is higher than our ask. It's also important to note that under the current zoning allowed, the density on this site would be, when you blend the 2 different zoning designations, would still allow 40 units per acre. We're seeking approval for just 2 additional units and a uniform zoning and land use designation. And we've also really tried hard to design this this project with a strong residential feel. We really have tried to make an effort to have it fit in with the surrounding buildings and the surrounding uses as best we can. The site includes 2 buildings, a single-story amenity building along 7th East and a 4-story apartment building on the interior of the site with surface parking that meets city code requirements. So, as I've mentioned, the site currently lacks proper infrastructure. The infrastructure, especially the utility infrastructure, is in very poor condition and will need to be replaced. There are no paved roadways or sidewalks throughout the site. Sorry, I'm trying to load the next slide here. So this shows some of the existing homes on the site. They're in major disrepair. These homes have seen some attempts to be updated over the years, but the utility and structural issues that are occurring here have essentially deemed these homes functionally obsolete. So, we want to note it that really on no uncertain terms, the existing homes on this site are going to be demolished and new housing will be built one way or another. And Katya also mentioned that the planning staff looked at that. The consideration for these homes to be renovated would be the right of the private property owner. And we've looked at the cost, even including the grants out there that are potentially available. And it's too cost prohibitive to rebuild those homes like they are now. So this rezone is supported by the adopted master plan documents, Plan Salt Lake, which specifically lists its housing guiding principles as access to a wide variety of housing types for all income levels throughout the city. And the growth principle is providing people with choices about where they live and how they live. It also calls for an increase in the diversity of housing types for all income levels. It specifically seeks to reduce the percent of income spent on housing for cost-burdened homes, and this co-living concept achieves all of those goals. Remember, this co-living option reduces the percent of income that an entry-level teacher in Salt Lake would spend on housing by half. So this project also meets the housing initiative sought by the city by enabling moderate density increases within existing neighborhoods where appropriate. Salt Lake City has also published an affordable housing guide, which calls for a spectrum of attainable housing that is privately driven. It calls for removing barriers which limit housing density and prohibit needed housing types, and calls to support the development of new or underutilized housing types. The report also specifically notes that innovative housing types are needed to address the housing affordability issues. These include implementing disruptive models in design and finance that show attainable housing can be built without government subsidies. They specifically list as one of these innovations co-housing or co-living as things that they are looking for, which have not happened in Salt Lake up to this point. So in conclusion, the vote to recommend approval of this project, the second vote to recommend approval of this rezone, would be a vote in favor of attainably priced housing and a vote in support of allowing the goals in Plan Salt Lake set forth by City Council and the Mayor's Office for an innovative approach to addressing the affordable housing crisis in Salt Lake. There really are 3 outcomes for this property that need to be carefully considered. There are other outcomes that can be dreamt up, but the reality is one of these 3 things is what's going to happen. So the first outcome is the approval of the proposed project, obviously. So this would provide dignified and attainably priced housing for 192 individuals. It would provide housing at rental rates that are below 60% AMI with no government funding required. Option 2, which we considered for this site, and almost certainly would be the approach of any other developer if they were going for a rezone, is they would go for proposing traditional luxury multifamily housing, which we see all over the place going up. This would be top of the market rates for 67 units. These rental rates are unattainable for most members of the workforce. And we tried hard to assess this. We went down that route initially, and we tried hard to assess what are the needs of the city and does co-living address those housing needs? And we believe it does. Finally, the denial of the project would ultimately result in about 30 luxury townhomes being built, which can be built by right under the current zoning. They'll sell for upwards of $1 million. So the opportunity to provide innovative housing in that case is lost and pushes for more high-priced housing that fills no needs of the community. So thank you for listening to us. We urge the commission to move forward with the previous recommendation for approval and let this continue forward to be heard by the city council, just as it was a few months ago. And also, just in conclusion, we'd also respectfully request an opportunity for a response period after the public comment portion of this hearing. And yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Mr. Perry, I'm not going to allow additional time after the meeting unless there are some issues raised by the public which have not been discussed in your presentation, in which case you may actually respond to that, just to let you know that ahead of time. I do have a question. You said that under the current zoning, 30 units of housing could be built. Would you build that?
That's on a portion of the site, 0.77 acres of the site, 30 housing units could
Yes.
be built. On
Right.
the other portions of the site, up to 50 housing units could be built. So when
Okay.
we laid out the site based on the current zoning and the existing zoning of the rest of the parcels, this subject property could support up to 40 units.
Okay. And so, okay, so I guess what I'm asking, and that's as of right, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot. All right, let's go ahead. Is there any other questions from the commission for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I can answer your previous question about the the purpose of the master plan amendment, if you'd like.
Okay.
So it's important to note that you're not looking at the project right now. That'll come later when the
Right.
conditional use and the plan development comes through. This is the request you're looking at is the rezone from SR3 to RMF 45. So you're looking to see if RMF 45 zoning is appropriate at this location. And so the master plan designation that's being requested would basically be more consistent with the RMF 45 zoning. So right now, the master plan designation is medium density residential for SR3. RMF 45 is generally more dense than that medium density residential. So that's why the request is for a change to the medium high density residential, and that's due to the zoning.
Okay. So is there a definition? I know we're not looking at the project, but for future reference, is there a definition of a unit under the designation of the rooming house?
There is not, because they are not looked at as a typical multifamily residential dwelling.
Okay, so how would we have guidance about the number of units?
It's going to be guided by, I think, as stated before, basically what can be built in essentially the building envelope. So you're basically
Okay.
bound by the height, by the setbacks, and by parking regulations and things like that.
Okay. All right. That clears that up. Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant or staff, broadly construed, about this project before we move to the public hearing? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. If you do wish to speak at the public hearing, please use the tiny little hand to push that as a button to raise your hand.
We do have a representative from the community council to speak first, and that is Melinda Main. Melinda, I'm going to unmute you now.
Okay, thank you. Melinda Main, I'm a board member for the East Central Community Council, and as previously stated, we do not support the change in zoning. We've got so many boarding houses in this neighborhood as it is. I understand things look really great, but anyway, I'd like to quote the master plan, the community master plan. The neighborhood also has a well-preserved inner courts, unlike those farther west. These small streets that penetrate the 10-acre blocks, such as Dooley Court and Strong's Court and Windsor Street, are still lined with small cottages dating from the beginning of the 20th century. The combination of imposing homes on the main streets and the main dwellings of the inner block courts indicate that the population of this area has always been a mixture of the rooted and the transient and the upper and lower income classes. We do not feel like that the proposal meets the criteria for changes to the plan. It's also our opinion that this proposal in its current configuration will not address the need of more moderately priced workforce housing. Upzoning like this fuels more land banking and speculation and drives up already inflated housing prices in the area. Part of the feedback of this proposal that we conducted a neighborhood survey was that most people prefer a small house with a yard and a yard versus a complex shared with facilities, if at all possible, which we have a number of those in the city already. And of course, we were told in the beginning what the housing costs or the room rents would be, upwards of $900 a month plus. At the first hearing, the developer said that the rents, well, anyway, okay, so as we know, the rents aren't going to be inexpensive. If the SR3 parcels are rezoned to RMF 45, there's no design review or additional community input to mitigate impacts and improve the project. We're concerned that the proposed requirement of renting rooms only to single people to skirt the parking requirement is in violation of the Fair Housing Act. As noted, our community needs more family and multi-generational housing and is oversupplied with studios and one bedroom already relative to larger rentals. More likely, this complex, as configured with shared facilities, would become a de facto student housing. The ECC supports large complexes of student housing be located on the University of Utah property where students are best served, as was defined in the Student Housing Master Plan. The ECC strongly supports maintaining moderately priced and naturally occurring housing in our community. We also support development by encouraging developers to utilize the countless lots within the ECC and District 4 already zoned for such development rather than tearing into our neighborhoods. We continue to discourage the displacement of existing neighborhoods who depend on moderately priced homes they are currently renting. We oppose the continued destruction of the fabric of our neighborhoods by classifying existing older workforce housing as worthless and beyond repair. There are many programs and tax advantages for rehabilitation since the houses are in the National Historic District boundaries. This plan impacts neighborhood quality of life, privacy, noise, traffic, density, light, destruction of another inner court development pattern, history and non-sustainable practices, and more. And we ask for a vote against this rezone. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move on. Let's go to Cindy Cromer. Go ahead, Cindy.
Hi, I want to express my thanks to Chairman Scheer for reopening the hearing. And also thank you for separating the plan development and conditional use from the requests in front of you tonight. The bundling of all four requests conveyed that the project was a done deal to tenants, property owners, and business people in the area, and especially on the block. Your vote in favor of the rezoning led some tenants to move soon after your vote. Never doubt that what you do and say makes a difference in people's lives. Secondly, the most important thing I learned from Izzy Wagner was the concept of sweating the land. That is what this proposal does. It pushes the land beyond its carrying capacity, if you can think of a parallel between people and livestock. In previous messages, I have emphasized the development potential on this block and the constraints imposed by the existing condominiums. This is not about the prevailing zoning on the block. It's about the prevailing development as condominiums and shared ownership. The staff report emphasizes the zoning, but the reality is that condominiums dating from the 70s and 90s determine the potential for a large portion of this block. The perimeter can certainly redevelop as RMF 45 and I think as RMU 45, but the interior will be considerably lower based on the divided ownership. Standard number 1 for a zoning amendment. It has been the city's clear intent to protect interior block streets in the older portions of the city since the adoption of the SR3 zone in 1995. Standards 2 and 3, without a major fire or earthquake or the proposed zoning change in front of you, the average height on the interior of this block would continue to be that of the Watts condos. The staff report refers again to zoning, but because of the condominiums, the adjacent zoning is irrelevant to the impact of the properties which are not going to redevelop. I suspect that you believe that the proposals you addressed years ago have now been adopted by the City Council, but they haven't been. There is a logjam of ordinances in the City Council office which are relevant to this proposal. You are being asked to support loopholes in ordinances such as housing loss mitigation, and I would add the definition of a boarding house, which should have been taken care of long ago. Thank you very much.
Okay, next.
Thanks,
is,
Cindy.
Jesse, let's see, sorry, Jesse Anderson. Go ahead, please.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to urge the commission to vote against this proposal. The proposed rezone, I think, would negatively affect the standard of living in the neighborhood and like our city as a whole. And people should not be forced to share kitchens and living spaces when the rent is not that cheap or at all. And I feel like the solution to affordable housing is not deregulation, and no part of this proposal includes stipulations to make these rooms affordable, only that they can be cheaply produced. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I apologize for the little lag here. I'm just trying to get things straight. The next we'll go with Alex Benton. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, my name's Alex. I'm with the group called Wasatch Towns United, and we oppose the redistricting or rezoning of this part of the neighborhood. I live just a couple of streets down. My fear coming from this being rezoned is that it'll drive up rent prices in the surrounding neighborhood, as it sets a standard for a small apartment that is shared to be priced significantly higher than what I'm currently paying, and what other people in the area are also paying. And even though they may claim that this is going to end up being an affordable housing unit, I think it'll inevitably lead to people who are priced below this price point to get pushed out of this neighborhood and have to find housing elsewhere. And that's something I don't want to see. So yeah, and I think setting a standard where a shared space and 200 square feet of private living area sets a bad standard for what decent housing is inside of Salt Lake City. I'd like to see people being able to have an apartment where they don't have to, share a kitchen and a living room with up to 3 other people that they may not know. I've lived in a similar situation to that. I didn't like it at all. It was one of the worst housing situations I've been in. And we're just trusting the word of the developer that this is going to be some sort of luxury apartment complex. I don't think they have any real guarantee that it's going to be fairly priced to allow people to continue living in the neighborhood and to set a good standard for what good housing can look like in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to go with Jim Wells. Go ahead. Jim, are you there? Okay, we'll come back to Jim. Let's go with Jeff Taylor. Go ahead, Jeff.
The current owners, and I'd like to read a letter by a former tenant. They've asked me to read that. I'd like 2 minutes to do that if I could, and then I'd like to make my own statement if that's okay.
No, actually, is there any way you can email that letter?
I can.
Can you email it to us and then we can read it for them?
Absolutely, I can.
Okay.
I'll have to scan it, but I will read it. Yep. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll just go ahead and make my own statement then.
Yes,
And I
please.
hope everybody's had a chance to read the owner's statement of the current condition of the property. If you have, it becomes clear that the expense of trying to fix these homes, many of which don't even have foundations, is cost prohibitive. And once you add the cost of providing curb, gutter, sidewalks, and streets, as well as replacing the sewer mains and laterals, it's obvious these homes are going to be replaced. That's simply the honest truth. What we've got here is a choice of what we're going to be replacing it with. And we're always hearing about a need for more attainable and affordable housing. And we've got that opportunity right in front of us. Because if we don't choose that, what we are going to get is more luxury townhomes. And if we're worried about escalating home prices in the neighborhood, that's exactly what will do it. In regards to Jesse and Alex's comments, I understand what you're saying, but we have those apartments already. You can go get a 2-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment where you're not sharing anything, and you can pay $1,500 and $2,000 and $2,500 for those. So this is an attempt to bring down housing costs. I mean, the reality is we just do not have reasonable, inexpensive housing in Salt Lake anymore. I've heard comments that this is going to be for students or blue collar workers or hourly wage earners. That's exactly who this is going to help. And those are great people. This development will provide housing for all of the people that are at that price point that are looking for that rent level. And so as many units as we can add to that price level, it helps everybody. The long and short is these homes are going away, and we have a choice to choose attainable housing instead of luxury townhomes. And so I'm hoping that we'll make that choice because we don't need more luxury townhomes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is John Ribbons.
Cool. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So first, my name is John Ribbons. I'm with Wasatch Tenants United. I want to start off by just addressing some points about acting like you can go get a $1,500 studio apartment. I mean, just really quick, I looked up on Zillow. Half a block west of there, you can find a 2-bedroom for $875. Half a block north of there, you can find a 2-bedroom for $1,200. These are not actually more affordable than what already exists on that block. These are about par for the course. The difference being is you don't get a private kitchen. And setting the standard is dangerous. We look at that, we have similar projects like this in like the Ballpark neighborhood where I live. I live in one of these. A year and a half ago, they were probably run for they were running for $625 a month. Now, someone just moved into one next door. They're telling me before any of the other fees, it is now $900. We have no guarantees from the developer that these will remain affordable, and there's no stipulations stating that. We're not going to make affordability by decreasing the quality. All we're going to make is the same kind of less affordable increasing rent, but just worse quality for everybody. So yeah, I'm sure that people have seen, you can objectively look at this. There's been a declining size of apartment along with the increasing rent in this city. So that's just a fact. If you go off the multifamily definition that the developer wants to use, one of these 4 bedrooms is actually $3,200 a pop. For every month. That is not cheaper than what exists in the area for a 4-bedroom. Projects like these are intended to maximize the amount of rent collected from working people per square foot and not to provide affordable housing. Units built without private kitchens or bathrooms like this one create the incentive for landlords in the same market to charge a premium for their apartments that have private amenities. Other developers of similar projects have already stated their intention to charge upwards of $1,300 for these types of units eventually. The Planning Commission is a public body intended to act in the best interest of the public. With this consideration, you cannot in good conscience approve this proposal or give it a positive recommendation. The harm this could do to the neighborhood and the city by creating this new standard. Yep.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah, thank you, John. Next is Keenan Wells.
Finding right. If you haven't, then you can only assume.
It seems like we have somebody with their mic on. Keenan, can you speak? Keenan Wells? We will come back to Keenan. Let's see. Let's try Madeline. Madeline Gerhardt.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I will. I have a bunch of notes. I'll try to string them together. This is being cast as affordable housing, but as others have pointed out, this is likely to have the opposite effect, not only in that it probably won't stay affordable over time, but that it will actually, you know, by casting like privacy and security as like some luxury feature and not just like a standard of living that everyone deserves, it sets, you know, it sets up developers to charge even more for what people, single or families, are already getting. I think that Kevin Perry, you specifically mentioned dignity as a need that the Bueno Avenue rooming house style living affords. I disagree. That's not dignity. Having to share your space with someone that you have not picked, not vetted, that, you know, that's only up to the management, like that's not dignity. And then let me look through my other notes here. The project positions itself as a liberating choice for lower income. Well, actually, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you're targeting just single adults, then it's not really an affordable housing solution, is it? Because when we raise concerns in this city about affordable housing, it's not just for single people, it's for everyone, families who are trying to live on working class wages. Like, this is not an affordable housing solution. It just isn't. It in fact allows developers to make more profits per square foot while forcing forced residents to sacrifice their needs. I urge you to not support this rezone or this project. To choose this is still, even instead of luxury townhomes, it's still supporting the status quo. We need the city to put people's needs before developer profits. Thank you.
Okay, let's go now to Bruce Johnson. Bruce, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm on phone, but watching on the computer, so I want to make sure. I just wanted to say I'm in favor of this project. I think we're losing a little bit of the focus when we're commenting on whether the boarding house should be approved or not, when we're really talking about the RMF 45 zoning change here. I heard a couple comments about, you know, the relativity of Dooley Court and Windsor Street and all these areas that are pleasant streets to walk down because of the single family connection. And they're all surrounded in a single family kind of block. This block is all multifamily for the most part. It's already, I would say, what, 90% RMF 45. We're asking to just make that zone more consistent across the way. And the reality is that Bueno Alley right now it's a dark alley. It has no city support. There's no lighting. There's no curb gutter. It's dirt. It's kind of a dangerous area to, you know, if you walk down that street at night, I don't feel super safe as it is. So I do believe that developers will be redeveloping this lot regardless as it stands. And I think if we have the opportunity to make it more of a consistent zoning so that, you know, there's the flexibility there to develop it in a more consistent way, I think that's a real benefit for developers as well as for the city as a whole. I'm also not hearing many alternatives when people suggest not to propose, not to accept this. You know, I'm hearing reasons why they don't like the idea of what the developer is proposing, but I'm not hearing their alternatives that could reasonably be built there. A developer will honestly build there. So what would have been nice is to hear from the people not in favor of, like, well, we'd rather see, you know, townhouses, because I mean, that's the alternative of what we're going to see develop there. And so, you know, hearing some other alternatives would be a little more compelling when I hear someone say they're not in favor of the zone change. I think that's about all I have. So I appreciate your time.
Okay, we're going to go to Keenan Wells.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, sorry about earlier. My mic must have broken. So first, I will propose an alternative, actual affordable housing. This is possible. We can do this in this city. We are currently looking at something that is attainable is not affordable. Class A luxury is the opposite of affordable. The developer has himself stated that this is closer to a hotel than an apartment, and yet you're proposing people stay here long term. Okay. Also, $900 a month. Okay, if you compare that to a two-person apartment, that's two people sharing a fridge with 5 other people, which straight up does not work, and they're paying $1,800 a month versus the $1,500 a month, which is on the already inflated rate for a 2-bedroom. So this is more expensive than a 2-bedroom for 2 people. It's also, okay, they say this isn't student housing. This is clearly the only people who would want this are students. But this isn't a university dorm. There is no student safety. There is no dorm oversight. There is no RA. This is essentially a unsafe dorm at Class A luxury prices rather than actual affordable housing. So yeah, we're making a choice about the future here, and I'd like it to be affordable housing. This is something that the owner could commit to doing, but have consciously decided not to and pursue Class A luxury housing. The other thing, a direct question to Mr. Perry, is how much parking is actually provided on the site? And have you committed to that anywhere bindingly in writing? By my calculation, even if only a third of the units have cars, you have way too little parking, and those cars will spread out to other areas. A large number of students, and if you're stowing to blue-collar workers, most blue-collar workers have cars. And if these people aren't family sharing these, then you're talking about possibly hundreds of cars in a space that, even if it was entirely parking lot, could not fit all those cars. So, Mr. Perry, how much parking are you actually committed to providing, and have you done that in any binding way? I urge you to reject this in favor of going for more affordable housing. This is possible in Salt Lake. All it requires is will, and the will to ask developers like Mr. Perry to provide affordable housing. They haven't built it yet. It doesn't have to be Class A luxury. Thank you for hearing from me.
Thank you, Keenan. Next is Michael Valentine. Michael?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? So my name is Michael Valentine. I'm part of Save the Utah Pantages. I was arrested before the June meeting or July meeting before I can make comments then, so don't plan on getting arrested at this moment. But I'm here in support of Wasatch tenants and urge you to vote against this zoning change. I think this is a terrible idea for several reasons. Specifically, I'd like to talk about the Rmf zoning. I think this zoning is decimating Salt Lake City. We see it over and over again with the theater and our new restoration society that we started to fight against the decimation of historic properties. This high density zoning is just destroying all sorts of character and important things to the city. And I think you guys have a very serious role in the Planning Commission of how you use this. And the second goes against the master plans. Master plans are there for a reason. They're created with tens of thousands of hours, community input directly from citizens. They're our best blueprint for what the city should be, coming directly from citizens. So any changing, going against the master plan is very serious thing. And I don't think the applicant and these developers have adequately shown why they deserve the changing of the master plan. Salt Lake City is going against all sorts of master plans. We see it with the theater. Again, the Pantages was on the downtown master plan, specifically there to be restored into a cultural and activity generator that the city went against, and you guys voted against as well. We see it in the foothills where they're going against master plans for foot trails. And I think this is a very serious problem. Master plans are there for it to be for a reason. And then lastly, these are dormitories. Let's not like call things what they aren't. I know this developer was talking about a random person with $32,000 can afford this for 25%, but we don't talk, he didn't seem to mention that they're not getting 100% of an apartment. They're getting a shared kitchen space. These are dorms, and just Googling quickly on campus what dorms cost is $500 an hour. So vote against this. Do what's right and best for the city. These properties.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, next we'll have Jen Colby speak. Go ahead, Jen.
Hello, Jen Colby. I also ask that you vote to deny these applications. These are my own comments, by the way. I respectfully disagree with the staff report. It gave the developers the benefit of the doubt and downplayed the numerous conflicts with the area master plan and surrounding context. Citing bigger city plans while ignoring the master plan is really problematic in this entire process, and the developers have completely ignored the master plan. It does not fit the criteria for a rezone and is in direct conflict with the future land use map, even with the confusion over what units are in shared housing. I concur with the chair's assessment at the previous hearing that the SR3 upzoning would be a mistake we would regret. The master plan highlights these inner courts as one of the distinctive pattern language features of this area. The upzoning will lay the groundwork for a massive, inappropriately scaled luxury co-housing that displaces low-income and disabled residents who can't afford luxury. I'm particularly concerned also with one of the commissioner's previous remarks. They stated they did not like it when people said this was not the place for a given project. Isn't the entire function of the Planning Commission to understand, uphold, and properly interpret zoning ordinances and maps? And I'll say area plans. What goes where in context is zoning 101. Keeping development and uses in the correct zones is crucial to preventing rampant real estate speculation and dysfunctional neighborhoods and infrastructure. Perhaps you never get follow-up reports on the outcomes of applications that are denied. Here are two. The Haxton Apartments at 900 East redeveloped within the existing zoning and saved 2 historic houses that are now rentals. For the 5 200 South houses, the threats of teardowns were indeed a bluff, and the owners have painted, fixed up, and re-rented them. There are other options. Please resist being swayed by claims of houses in disrepair and high infrastructure costs. They should have done due diligence and should not have overpaid for this land. I ask you to vote against this zone and map change. It does not meet the criteria. Please focus on the zoning issues and don't buy into this. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay, next is Jared Zemp. Go ahead, Jared.
Hi there. Hey, I've lived in the university area for, the last 15 years and about a block from the university. And what I've seen over and over again is that regardless of zoning and regardless of enforcement, we start to see single family homes turn into multifamily dwellings regardless. And so I think that, to me, what I've seen is that all of our best laid plans aside, the market kind of dictates how land will end up being used and how homes will end up being used. That it's not even up to Mr. Perry to decide what rent is going to be. If the market wants to pay $900 for a shared room, they'll pay it, and if they don't, then Mr. Perry will have to lower his price. And I think that's what we've seen in that whole area is a lot of hoping that zoning will fix the problem when in reality the market makes the decision. And what I like about what Mr. Perry is proposing is that it increases the supply of available homes, which should bring down the price overall. Because I don't think the developers set the price. I think the market sets the price by the amount of available places to rent. And so I like the idea of housing that shares space and has a lower carbon footprint, because I also think it overall brings down the cost of housing in the city. I don't think any one project can bring down the cost of housing, but I think that this type of project can influence the supply that's available. And I think that this appears to be done in a responsible way, in a community that allows for biking and walking. Yeah, and if the market doesn't want dormitory style housing, then by all means they won't pay for it, and it'll be repurposed somewhere else. But I've seen this sort of thing work in other cities. I travel a lot for work, and I've actually stayed in homes like this in other American cities as well as European cities, and it's remarkably effective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Monica Hilding. Go ahead, Monica.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Because it says mute on mine. Okay. I strongly encourage that you vote or give a negative recommendation. This proposal and staff report ignore the negative recommendations from the East Central Community Council and clear conflicts with the Central Community Master Plan. And the reasons for the master plan have been spoken about by other people. Inappropriately, it applies zone amendment code standards to favor a developer, and inappropriately it applies other city housing plans and goals to benefit the developer's side. So what we have is that developers are being favored by the planning division, and the people who live there, I am one of them, have to take our own time and effort to try and fight against these developments that are happening all the time. It's just constant that we're fighting these. It fails to preserve naturally affordable older housing with creative infill and rehabilitation, not just tear downs. And again, as Jen pointed out, the houses on 200 South have been rehabilitated and they are all being lived in again. The threats that these developers go, oh, nobody can live there. It's totally, you know, I'm gonna watch my language. Okay, it's totally inappropriate for the city to be tearing down these very unique inner courts that are lovely places for people to live. And it's destroying people's lives. And the developer is only interested in money. I think his plan stinks. I just hope that you will not ignore the master plan, and you will ignore that spot zoning, upzoning fuels more land banking and driving up of prices. And that's not what we need in this neighborhood. We already have enough land banking going on. So please vote against this proposal, this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Sarah Balland. Sarah?
Hi, yes, thank you. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sarah J. Balland. I live in District 1. I am here representing Cooperation SLC. Cooperation SLC opposes the zoning amendments for the Bueno Avenue apartments and calls for the Planning Commission to recommend denying them for the following reasons. Firstly, co-living in a space that is owned and operated by someone working to make a profit off land in the real estate market by packing in as many residents as possible on said land will never render affordable housing. The property owner can still raise rent in accordance with the quote market, and we all know that they will continue to do so. Market-based rent, its number one goal being to make money rather than to sustainably house people, will continue to increase as income inequality continues to increase, and young and low-income folks will continue to be pushed out. Secondly, young and low-income folks are already sharing living space with each other. This is called having to get a roommate in your mid-30s in order to survive in the city in which your job and community are located. These proposed amendments are not an innovative use of resources to tackle what is a systemic issue. The city is enamored with viewing, quote, economic development through the most uncreative, basic, capitalist lens and then slapping the word innovative all over it. But you know what is actually innovative and also going on in other cities across the nation? Permanent real estate cooperatives, also known as PRECs. that are made up of partnerships between low-income and marginalized communities and even native tribes from whom the land was first stolen and parceled out. The Precs take land permanently off the speculative market with the sole purpose of housing people in perpetuity. Even if you produced more community land trusts in congruence with housing cooperatives, that would be a step up from this quote co-living. Now, of course, in the PREC and housing co-op models, land is not commodified, but held in trust, and those people who partner with each other co-own and co-govern the spaces on which they reside. Those people have a say about costs and what's best for their community. Those people are engaged democratically with one another. I urge you to change your paradigm on the meaning of what so-called community and economic development is. The market is what we make of it. It's not some magical, invisible, all-powerful force. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, next is Tiers B. Go ahead, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, please start my time as of now, not when you called my name. Thank you. Setting a precedent of co-living as a means of meeting the needs of poor and working class people of this city is dangerous and dishonorable. By the way, I'm a member of Wasatch Tenants, as it redefines the most rudimentary HUD standards of non-homelessness as luxury. The people of the Valley do not merely deserve basic housing as this so-called luxury housing offers, but rather we deserve decent housing. I do not think that the basic quality of life and dignity of the people of this Valley is met by this proposal. In fact, it is an assault on our dignity. I find it disingenuous that the developers are advocating for this as a means of decreasing average rent when the reality is that current rent for a two-bedroom in the area is already on par with what these units cost. Moreover, these rent prices will only increase per the trajectory of current market rates of rent in the Valley. There is no stipulation that they will remain affordable and will set a precedent for basic amenities as being a luxury, allowing other rents to increase that have those. As a former case manager at the Road Home, I can also say with certainty that the co-living would only increase the amount of discrimination against those that are seeking to restore their lives from the situation of homelessness. The current developers seeking to invest in this project are functionally threatening us with even higher rent prices via luxury townhomes within the current zoning if we do not heed to their desires to set higher precedent for co-living. That is an attack on our rights and needs as tenants. If you believe that development should be conducted with the people's interests primarily in mind, I urge you to vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is, give me just a minute here. Just one moment. Actually, I think I'm going to turn the time over to Michaela. We have had a couple of emails that have come in.
Yes, and I would ask if those of you who have already spoken, would you go ahead and hit that little hand again so that we just make sure that you don't need to, you're not wanting to, that we've gotten everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. I will just read the first comment from Trapper Roderick. My name's Trapper Roderick. I am a local business owner and a local builder as well. My clients have expressed desperate need for a project like Bueno Avenue. It's nearly impossible to be a professional in this city, whether you are established or just getting started. Rent and home ownership is very expensive. Neighborhoods all throughout the state are lined with car parking on the street because multiple families or young adults are living at home with their parents. People want and need more favorable priced housing without being classified as student housing or low income. Thank you. One comment. I'm going to read Katie Ducos, D-U-C-O-S. My name is Katie Ducos and I'm moving to the East Central neighborhood. I'm urging the commission to vote against the proposal for Bueno Avenue apartments. This proposed development causes many problems and will negatively impact the living conditions of the East Central neighborhood and the whole community. This rezone would allow developers to create micro units that force working people to share kitchens because there will be no kitchen in the unit itself. These units increase in rent dramatically regularly, which is a concern for tenants in those units with a starting price of $800. But it is also a major concern for other apartments in the area. If kitchens become a luxury good, most tenants in the area will be priced out of their apartments and left with no options. There are many consequences for allowing developers to build units like this, and it's not a solution for the housing shortage. It's unsustainable and will lead to further affordable housing shortages. The solution to the affordable housing shortage is not deregulation, and no part of this proposal includes stipulations for affordability. As a concerned renter, I'm asking the commission to vote no on this proposal. I work full-time with over twice the minimum wage and can barely afford $800 rent, the starting point for these market units. We can't allow deregulation and developers to price out so many of the renters that make Salt Lake City what it is. And then Jeff Taylor sent his friend's comment. His friend was David Beam. Let me just open this PDF. Okay. I, David Beam, lived at 732 East Bueno for 30 years. Jeff Taylor and Bruce Johnson bought the property a number of years ago. They were good landlords to me. They did not raise my rent. They fixed the issues and repairs that came up, and they dealt with a number of sewer repairs. They gave me lots of notice that a development was planned for my area and even provided me with a deposit when I found a new apartment. I was not expecting this, and I hadn't asked for it, but it was a blessing and obviously was extremely helpful to me. I was sad to move, but my house had become dangerous to live in and was beyond repair. Thank you. That's all I have for emails to read into the record.
We do have a couple of more hands that have come up. The first here is Angela Montenegro. Go ahead, Angela.
Angela.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Hopefully you can hear me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela Montenegro with the Rose Park Brown Berets in support of Wasatch Tenants United, as well as other members of the community who cannot be here tonight. Bless you. Bless you. Thank you to everyone who are raising their voices against this proposal. Now I am urging the commission to vote against this proposal for the following reasons, many which have been stated already here tonight. The proposed rezone will negatively affect the standard of living in the neighborhood and the city as a whole. The city should not allow developers to force working people into sharing kitchens. The proposed project does not include private kitchens within the units. Many micro apartments have seen their rent and cost increase nearly 30% over the last year alone. The last year. The consequences of allowing developers to build tenements as a solution for a housing shortage far outweighs the benefits. The solution to the affordable housing shortage is not deregulation, and no part of this proposal includes any stipulations or hard lines for affordability. This city needs real affordable housing. Everyone deserves a place to live, but the focus should be on providing housing for the most disadvantaged, housing for low-income working families in the heart of the city, not just brushed aside out to the periphery. The market does not make decisions. We do. All that is required is the will to do what must be done. Again, I am urging the commission to vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelo.
And next is Casey McDonough. Go ahead, Casey.
Thank you very much. So I've been listening to all the comments, and you know, where I was going to start was in the context of development. The developers surely purchased the properties with the clear understanding of how they were zoned. It's a reflection of the past, of community input in the past, of numerous hours of city input, of the residents giving their input. I think that's clearly reflected in the community council's input, that they don't want to see this the zoning changed and upzoned. And so, you know, and they've said as much. They've said that, well, if we don't do this, we can build townhomes. Whether they're expensive or not is a reflection of the market. As we all know, the market changes. And as was pointed out by another commenter, you know, their goals could change with an approval or with a denial of this application. So someone commented about alternatives. Obviously, that's one of their alternatives. You don't upzone the property to accommodate this project for all the reasons people are are against it, community council in particular, master planning in particular, or even just because it's currently zoned the way it is for a reason. That isn't superfluous. It's been that way for a very specific reason. And like I said, from the input in the past and from how the people of the city wanted to see our city develop and progress. This particular property, in my perspective, is even more important. It's stuck between the South Temple and Avenues Historic Zone, the University Historic District, and the Central City Historic District, and is itself inside of a National Historic District. So how much they paid for the property is probably a reflection of what they're trying to do. Their alternatives are to do a high-end townhome project under the current zoning, or if they wanted to make less money, they could restore some of the homes and fix up some of the other properties with new housing. So, I mean, the alternatives are numerous. I would urge you not to approve or recommend this, because I think that the loudest voices and the majority of the voices against this are the community, and the community doesn't want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey.
Okay, next is Dylan Stoddard. Go ahead, Dylan.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm Dylan Stoddard. I'm also with WTU, Wasatch Tenants United. I lived on this street for 23 years, my entire life. I view Salt Lake City as a home, and I would hate to keep seeing properties that prioritize kitchen living and bathrooms as luxury products. I don't think we should be changing this neighborhood in a way that only would be used by students or in a form of a halfway house. I don't understand why we're focusing on destroying people's homes in order to build new housing when, as any Salt Lake City resident would know, the entire city is speckled with unused land. You know, just down the street from me on 4th and 2nd, there's a Big Lots that's been sitting vacant and empty and unused for the past 4 or 5 years. Why aren't we building there? Why are we building on people's homes? There are empty lots all over the place. Salt Lake City is full of seldom used parking lots. I'm frustrated that, you know, the projects that we're trying to build and, you know, change this city. I'm not against densification. I'm very much against this project. We're destroying people's homes in order to build small dorm rooms. I don't understand. I don't understand why this is a viable option. Why we would push this through. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, next is, give me just a moment here, Laurel Clayson. Go ahead, Laurel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I am also urging the commission to vote against this proposal. I live in Central City, Liberty Wells area, just a few blocks away. As a low-income service worker who lives in the neighborhood, I am supposedly the target market for this development, but I do not think that this project will meet the needs of people like me, nor do I think that it is significantly less expensive than our current options. Traditionally and currently, working class people can share rent costs and space as roommates if they're looking to save money. This development removes the choice of who a person lives with and instead throws adult strangers together into dorm style living. I do not think that sharing a cooking and eating space with strangers represents dignity. Additionally, I would like the commission to consider what will happen to the pricing of apartments in the surrounding neighborhood as we allow projects that consider a kitchen optional. An apartment with its own kitchen will be considered a more luxurious apartment, and this means it could be a more expensive apartment. And finally, prices for micro apartments such as these ones are currently skyrocketing. Some of the prices have risen as much as 30% in the past year. Without rent control, why should we expect that these single bedrooms, which are proposed to be around $800, won't be $1,200 a year or so in the future? It's also been said almost in a threatening way that if this rooming house is not built, luxury townhomes will be. I'd just like to say that every time we build a new development in this city, we are making a choice. We can choose what is built in this spot. We can choose affordable housing. That could look like small single family homes or small traditional apartment buildings, which could fit within current zoning. And, we could also choose to regulate rent prices, but that's a different story. So again, please vote against this proposal.
Thank you.
So let me get one last look here. I do believe that we have gone down the list. If there's anybody else that wishes to speak, please make sure you raise your hand. I do not see anybody else that wishes to speak on this matter.
Thank you. Seeing no more people wishing to speak, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for questions and answers. Do the commissioners have any specific questions arising out of the testimony for the developer?
Actually, Madam, oh,
Yes.
um, the developer wanted to make a statement in response to the public hearing.
Yes, I know he did. Thank you. So do the commissioners have any specific questions for the developer that came out of the comments in the public hearing? Okay, Mr. Perry, please keep your remarks to the contents of the public hearing.
Okay, and will I be given the traditional 5 minutes response time or?
No, please make it as brief as possible.
Okay. Well, I thank you for the opportunity to respond. I do appreciate it. And I want to state that despite what some people are saying, I personally care deeply about this community and this concept and believe that it will benefit the community. There was a lot of responses that were against it, but provided no reasonable alternatives. There was a specific question regarding parking stalls. We will have 72 parking stalls. This meets the city code required number of parking stalls. Also, there was a real fixation on our rent numbers stating $900 to $1,300 per month in rent. We did not address the rent number in our statement. I will address that now and state that co-living is a concept that has been proven across several markets. It's been proven to be pricing these units at 40% below a comparable studio apartment. I want to be clear on what this is. This is market rate apartments that by design and by function of what they are, they lead to attainably priced rents. That leads to 40% below market rate rents. End of story. The market dictates what happens, not just in terms of apartments, but everything, how properties are developed, how businesses are run. Stating that, we just raise our rents, well, the market is actually what dictates how things go. This type of project is subject to those same market conditions. I also want to state that we all know the city's facing a major housing crisis. I think everybody's basically stated that. Some spoke about the master plan documents, and I wanted to address that as well. So we believe that the rezone of this property exceeds the expectations set forth in the master plan document Plan Salt Lake, while providing housing that's an innovative and attainably priced housing through a market and private development. I also want to address that disrepair and neglect is, of course, not a justification for a rezone. However, disrepair often is a result of a zoning designation that is not working. The East Central Neighborhood Master Plan over this area from 1984, almost 40 years ago, identified this property as a property in need of rehabilitation or redevelopment. In their assessment, they placed this property, these specific parcels, where only 1.9% of parcels in this community were placed, they placed it in the worst category requiring substantial reconstruction. This was 40 years ago, nearly, in 1984. So think for a moment how much growth has occurred in the past 40 years. I have personally gone and walked every interblock street zoned SR3 in this community. Every single one of them has seen significant upgrades with new homes, renovations, city-funded utility upgrades, streetways, sidewalks, curb and gutters, all have been installed. There is a reason why this SR3 zoned area has not been improved, while every other SR3 zoned alley is improving and is thriving. They're beautiful. That's a real strong indication that this is not the right fit for an SR3 zone. It's correct to state that the SR3 zone was established to protect interblock neighborhoods. However, a strong indicator that a property is inappropriately zoned would be when the city hasn't followed through on their called for investment to improve it over a 40-year period. This has been evidenced by the lack of interest in investment on this property by both previous private owners and by the city. Finally, there was some questions about, it's been brought up that this may be good, this may be something that the community needs. We've heard that several times, including in the last meeting. Just not here. So if not here, where? Where do we solve the housing crisis? Should it not be here because it's on the east side instead of on the west side? Is it because there's more prominent individuals on the east side? It is unreasonably to simultaneously state that my city needs housing and they need attainably high-priced housing, but I don't want it in my neighborhood. Especially when the alternative is clearly the construction of million-dollar townhomes. I would love to have million-dollar homes built around my property as well. It would drive my property values sky high, but that's not the standard for deciding what type of housing is appropriate. Finally, I'll just close up with this. We are not claiming this as an affordable housing project. We should be clear, it is market rate, but it is built and operated in a professional and safe way that keeps rent attainable for the individual, regardless of their income level and whether they qualify for this type of housing. And I mean that qualify in terms of rent restricted housing, where many can't afford rent, don't qualify for rent restricted, but still can't find somewhere to live. While it might not be the choice of housing for some, and it certainly does not fit all, there is strong demand for this housing at this price point. It's naturally occurring affordable housing through a new and innovative model that for the right tenant will drive their total cost of living down by hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month. As a commission, it's your duty to push the community forward and support responsible and innovative development that go further in addressing the housing crisis, which is the largest crisis you are facing today. This project is an excellent way to fulfill that duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. So I will bring it now back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners, there's only 4 of you. You're going to have to talk.
Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, I would like to say something before we make a motion, though, because normally I will not be able to vote on this, but I am not in favor of this project. If it were an affordable housing project, it might be a different reason to upzone the middle of the block, but as it is not, and it is a much higher density in terms of residents, I believe that this is not a good fit for a zoning change. And I acknowledge that there may not be any way to save the 7 houses that are there, but I would much rather see a lower scale development of townhouses than this project and its development height and intensity. The developer has talked about the cost of infrastructure, and even his engineer says that the cost of infrastructure is the same whether you build this large project or you build or you renovate the existing houses. And I'm assuming it would be pretty much the same and to be shared across allowable 30 units of townhouses if that were going to happen. I think by denying this, we could also give this property a chance to see some other kind of development that is more in keeping with the master plan for the community. I would be very sad to lose the opportunity that is currently afforded by these smaller streets within the blocks. So go ahead, Amy. If anybody else wants to speak, please do. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, I'll make a motion and we can discuss after that.
Okay.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the City Council for the Master Plan PLN PCM 2021-00047 and zoning PLN PCM 2021-00048 amendments with the following conditions. One, that the plan development and conditional use are approved by the Planning Commission, and two, that the 10 parcels be consolidated into one parcel.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kacha Pace. May I speak about the motion?
I don't think that's proper. I think it either needs a second or then it's withdrawn before you can do that.
Are you against the form of the motion, Katya?
I read it directly from your motion sheet.
Yeah, and I was advised this afternoon by our city attorneys that we can't make a condition on the master plan, the plan development conditional use before the property is zoned appropriately for the plan development and conditional use and the consolidation of the lots.
Okay. So those conditions that you
were erroneously placed in the motion sheet and should not be there. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm hearing too. Yes.
This is Hannah. I can further explain. I think the principle behind them is fine if the desire is to consider those. I think it's just a matter of the form. What we don't want is them to be conditions precedent to the zoning.
Yes.
Because then you wouldn't be able to do the zoning until the administrative acts that can't happen until the zoning happen. So it places us in a difficult legal position. But if you do want those requirements, we could appropriately place them in the form of a development agreement tied to the zoning, which would ensure that those things take place. So I would just tweak the motion if it's your desire to require the consolidation of the lots and receive approval for the conditional use for this proposed project, that those just be terms incorporated in a development agreement tied to the rezone, as opposed to a condition precedent. So that's a lot of nuance, but.
So Hannah, I'm a little confused here. So the condition that the plan development and conditional use are approved by the Planning Commission, if we do not approve those, then the zoning does not get recommended? Or the zoning change is not recommended?
Well,
is that what you're saying we don't want to do?
Well, if we have it as a condition precedent to the rezone couldn't take place until those were approved.
Right.
And those technically can't be approved until the zoning changes because they aren't allowed uses in the current zone, right?
Right. I understand. So, so we are voting here on a straight zone change and master plan change. Not on, and I think everybody should understand that we are not voting on this specific project with its specific layout, design, parking units, anything else. We are just voting straight up zoning change, master plan amendment.
Exactly.
Is that okay?
We separated those out
yes
on the last time because we didn't want it all packaged.
Right.
I'm fine to remove those as conditions.
Okay.
I would just appreciate when there is legal advice for stuff like that the motion sheets in the Dropbox get updated prior to our meetings. So my motion would stand minus the two conditions. because I
Thank you.
understand the cows and mat game that the cat and mouse game that go along with that.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. So is there any further discussion? Would anyone like to talk some more about this? All right, then they'll go ahead. Maureen,
No.
Amy,
Yes.
Carolyn,
No.
John,
Yes.
and I will vote no. That brings it to a 3 noes to 2 yeses, and the motion fails. Thank you all very much for your time and energy. And so we will now move on to the next item on our agenda.
So
I'm sorry?
the planning commission has to take action and forward a recommendation or table or continue the matter. So that motion failed. You should call for another motion.
I see. Okay. Carolyn, would you like to make another motion?
I will.
Okay, thank you, Maureen.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, the input received during the public hearing, I move the Planning Commission recommend the City Council deny the master plan PLN PCM 2021-0047 and zoning PLN PCM 2021-00048 amendments for the reasons that it's not compatible with the master plan and the context of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Carolyn. I have a motion from Maureen and a second from Carolyn. Maureen,
Yes.
Amy,
No.
Carolyn,
Agree.
John?
No.
Okay, that's a tie vote, and I'm going to vote yes on that motion to send a negative recommendation to the City Council. So that brings it 3-2 for a negative recommendation. Are there any other comments we need to make about that, staff, council? Okay, then we're going to go ahead with our next item on our agenda, which is the Baggett Accessory Dwelling Unit at approximately 2274 South Green Street. And the staff person is Aaron Barlow.
Good evening. Let's make this as quick as possible. I can share my screen. Okay. First off, shout out to our graphic designer and our staff and his team for putting together a new template for our reports. You'll be seeing new presentations in the future. This was just this morning when he sent us the template. So this is a request for conditional use approval for a accessory dwelling unit, detached accessory dwelling unit at 2274 South Green Street at the
Hey, Aaron,
location.
just a note really quick, you're not sharing your screen yet if you intended to.
I clicked it. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Okay, there it is. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, as I was saying, request for conditional use approval at 2274 South Green Street. The yellow blob there is the proposed location of this accessory dwelling unit, and staff is recommending approval with the conditions in the staff report. Here is a site plan of the proposed project. The applicant has included an RV parking pad and a garage as part of this project, but they are not part of this petition. And the only area that requires your review is the accessory dwelling unit in the southwest corner of the property. Here's a view of the rear yard. It's a little curved because I took it on panoramic version on my phone. You can see the fence there on the right side where the ADU will be located only goes to the end of that garage. And one of the conditions as part of this application is to require a fence all the way to the rear property line along the side of the ADU. Recommendations, we're giving 2 recommendations for this request. The first is for the 6-foot tall fence. And the second is the limiting no short-term rentals at this ADU. Any questions? Did I miss anything?
Aaron, isn't the 30-day short-term rental part of city ordinance anyway?
It is part of city ordinance. This is to make it clear. It's been standard procedure for these ADU applications. You can choose not to include that if you don't think it's necessary.
All right. Is the applicant here?
I believe so. Hopefully he's stuck around.
I'm here. Yeah, Michael Lawler, Brock Design.
Do you, Michael, would you like to share a screen?
You know, the owner of our company, Dave Brock, I think is going to take over for me. I have to go pick up a child who's waiting to be picked up. I'm sorry. I didn't think it would last this long.
I'm happy to share the screen, Michael.
Mr. Brock into the panelist mode. Mr. Brock, do you want to share your screen?
You know, I'm not really prepared to make any kind of presentation, so I'm going to choose not to share my screen, but you know, I'm happy to entertain any questions or concerns that anybody might have about the design.
Yeah, I think I sent a PDF to Aaron Barlow this morning, and that has pretty much a great overview of the whole project. If you have access to that, Aaron.
Here it is.
Yeah, it's just basically the ADU on the left and the garage on the right. And I think, you know, it's a very large yard, so our numbers, our ratios, I think, are good. And I don't think there's a lot more to say about it. There was a lot of concern with the Sugar House group about, I guess there was another ADU on this block that has turned into a very prominent Airbnb. And they spoke to the owner, Nick Baggett, and he's assured them that this is actually a mother-in-law. A mother-in-law is actually going to live in this. So
yeah, I could also add, you know, obviously quite a large lot. The alley is actually quite large as well. It's a 20-foot wide alley. We tried to focus it on the alley. We put a little front porch on the ADU with a gate for the main entrance off the alley, and there excuse me, there also is a little parking space, kind of a parallel type parking space between the alley and the ADU, which is not super apparent from the drawings, but the owner wanted something sort of more traditional in form. We went with the pitched roofs. They also wanted south-facing roofs for future solar panels. So, you know, we just went with the east-west gables, and yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. 17-foot height, so very, very sort of modest proposal.
Okay, thank you. All right. So thank you. Is there any other questions from the Planning Commission before we before we open it up for a public hearing? Everybody's so quiet. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Do we have any people who wish to speak?
Yeah, we do have Judy Short from the Community Council.
Thank
Judy,
you.
go ahead, please.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to say because Mr. Lawler pretty much covered the points. This particular block is very cautious about ADUs, having been had the wool pull over their eyes by, this was the very first ADU that we approved that has turned into this ADU. And we've been working with enforcement and can't seem to make any headway. So I think we would prefer that that sentence be in the letter of approval. Even though I think everyone has talked to this man and he's very clear that his mother-in-law is going to live there and we're not worried about that. It's a big yard, so it makes it a more attractive space, I think, than some of them that are squeezed into a small lot. So we'd like you to approve it.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Judy.
Next, we have Nick Baston. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, if you can hear me. So I'm actually the owner of the house. My last name is actually Baston, not Baggett. So yes, we're from Ohio originally. Our moms live out in Ohio, so it would be nice to have some space when they come out and visit. They both retire here in a couple of years. In the interim, if we do, it'd be a long-term rental for a college student or somebody in the area. But really the game plan is to have a space for our moms to come out and visit and stay for months on end and not be in our space.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. We do have Keenan Wells, who I believe spoke at the last item. Keenan, do you want to speak to this matter also?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please.
And again, it's been brought up again, but with this owner, it seems pretty clear it's not going to become an Airbnb. Is there any stipulation that a future owner can't turn it into an Airbnb?
Our code does require agreement, a deed restriction on the property, as well as the listed condition.
Yeah. So in that case, I'm in support of it. I just don't want to see more Airbnbs taking up affordable property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Jen Colby who would like to speak. Jen, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, Jen Colby here again. Just wanted to make a couple of comments generally about ADUs. I wanted to point out that District 4 is the only district that has 0 R1 or single family zoning in the entire district. So all of ours are approval by right. And I guess I'm concerned that that standard doesn't hold across the city and why that might be the case. So actually, I see how many ADUs show up on your agendas. And frankly, I think this should be citywide at this point. The Airbnb issue is a completely separate one in the sense that the city is utterly failing to enforce and our legislature is not helping. I worked for the census and you would be surprised how many both vacant units there are out there, how many floors of our new buildings downtown had been leased to companies doing Airbnb rentals out of housing that had been pitched for locals. So the Airbnb issue is serious, but is a totally separate thing. And it's just pointing out that we have plenty of housing. It's just not being appropriately rented in our city. As far as ADUs, I have aging parents. I am currently really struggling because my mother doesn't actually have a caregiver unit. And I think this is so crucial for aging in place and for multi-generational families. We have this, especially sort of white Western culture has really prioritized so-called, nuclear families, I think, to our community detriment. So the more ability for people to have older relatives or students or other family members or people who need housing join them on their property in the appropriate locations, the better. So that was just my comment, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jen. Wayne, in regard to that, can you clarify whether or not we actually need, the Planning Commission actually needs to see conditional use in these things anymore after the last legislative session?
After last legislative session, basically attached ADUs or ADUs located within the principal structure are allowed as permitted uses. They did not in state code address detached ADUs. So therefore our code still applies to those.
Okay.
I think what was mentioned is that, just to clarify, ADUs in multifamily districts are just permitted uses. It's actually only in the single family districts where ADUs require a conditional use. And then just to clarify also the Airbnb situation, and it was mentioned before, is that Airbnbs just by code are not allowed in these. We've just, because we've heard you know, a lot of folks having issues with Airbnbs, that we've just put those in as conditions, just so it's really highlighted, hey, you can't do this as an Airbnb, but they are not allowed as Airbnbs. So if a community member feels that there is one, please contact zoning enforcement.
Thank you. Thanks, Wayne. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak in the public hearing?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for probably for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Maureen.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented and input received during the public hearing, I move the Planning Commission approve the conditional use request PLN PCM 2021-00653 with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion from Maureen and a second from Carolyn. So let's go ahead and vote. Maureen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
John?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0. Thank you all very much. If there is no further business, the Planning Commission will then be adjourned. Thank you all very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.